Great, thanks, Ryan, and thanks everybody who has decided to join us today. This is a great time frame for us being able to make a plan and try to stick to it when the first year rolls around. And so we want to be able to get some really good, concrete ideas on how maybe this year can be different than other years. So we're going to try to create a plan that works, that we can actually stick to and have success with. So why is it hard? There we go. Why is it so hard to create a wellness plan that works for us and that we actually stick to? Well, it's because change is difficult, uncomfortable, and most of us resist change. The familiar becomes a false sense of security, even if it's bad habits and even if it's behavior that doesn't really serve us very well. Fear prevents us from moving forward, and the what if come up. All those thoughts. What if I lose money? What if it's the wrong decision? What if I can't keep up? There is also the lack of clarity about our motivation. There can be a poor understanding of the hidden obstacles and barriers that have been keeping us from achieving our goals until now. Missing resources and some knowledge or research. And maybe underestimating the difficulty of establishing new habits. All these make it very hard, and we've noticed it goal after goal that sometimes it's very difficult. So we're going to get a good plan together. However, we have to remember that change is necessary, it's good, it's exciting, it's thrilling, and it's energizing. And that's why we want it. That's why we crave it. One of the hardest parts about making a plan that we actually can stick to is the barriers. The barriers can come in the way of creating these habits that help us achieve the goals and maintaining the habits that help us keep the achievement of the goals. The key part is to find a way over, under, around, through the barriers that can get us in between you and your goals and feeling that achievement. The best way is to identify and prepare for those barriers. There are two kinds of barriers. We have internal barriers and we have external barriers. Internal barriers that block our progress are composed of our personal belief systems, our values, our self-confidence, our self-esteem, our self-talk, that internal devil that sabotages our efforts to change. So those are some internal barriers that we want to identify and prepare for. The external barriers help us derail our goals. Sometimes when sources of stress, additional stress arises, there's a break in your routine, a spouse or partner objects to you using time for your own self-care, families rebel against dietary changes, workloads increase, jobs changes, money gets tight, aging parents, health worsen, etc. Those are the external barriers that often can be not seen right away, but if we already know that there could be barriers and we have plans A, B, C, D, E, and F to keep those goals going and those habits going, we can help to not have a result of resuming our bad behavior, continuing, starting smoking again, or dropping our healthy eating habits, stop using our management techniques for stress, or increase our amount of sedentary activities and so forth. We don't want to go back to that. So if we're going to create a plan, there are some six things to keep in mind, and we'll talk about each one of these. Lack of planning, spend the time. Trying too much too soon, which can be the recipe for disaster. Got to have convenience of location and time. You got to work within your comfort level. You have to set some good, concrete, realistic, attainable goals, and keep flexibility within your plan. And if you create the plan and you move through these, and if you stray from your plan, you got to start it up again. So these are good things to think about when you're creating your plan and planning for those barriers. Let's talk about each one. The lack of planning. We've got to spend the time, and we're going to give you the steps that we were going to talk about today that help you to not have the barrier of lack of planning. We want to spend the time. When we don't plan, we cannot foresee barriers, or we don't already have a plan B in place when an unforeseen barrier comes up. So planning is very important. Second one is trying too much too soon. We need to take small steps. We also need to do maybe one at a time. Often we are very motivated to make changes because we want to make all kinds of changes, and if we try to make too many changes at once, we're not going to be able to do all of them at once. So saying that you're going to work out 7 days a week sets you up to feel bad if you only did 6 days a week. That's too bad, because working out 6 days is fantastic and should be celebrated. So we want to be able to set smaller goals and not do too much too soon. Convenience is a big piece of your planning plan. Location, time. We need to have location and times for our new habits to be convenient and doable. If we're working out close to home, or are we going to do it during lunch or before work, after work, it's got to be convenient. It's got to fit into your schedule. When do we call friends? When do we decide we're going to quit smoking? Having money directly deposited into your savings account, or bills paid out of your account, or opening an online dating profile to pursue relationships. It's got to be something that's convenient, that's going to help you stay motivated. And speaking of motivation, if it's comfortable, you're going to be more motivated. For example, if you have a plan to work out, and it's a weight loss plan, and you like dancing, if you did Zumba or Wii Fitness, you're going to be more motivated because you're going to like it. We have to do things that we like. We know we have to force ourselves to meet goals, but if we can't motivate ourselves, we can't force ourselves. And you can't tell yourself you never will have sugar again. You have to change the habit of having sugar with each meal. So we have to be comfortable with what we set up. And our goals need to be very smart. They're concrete, realistic, and attainable. A great acronym to be able to keep in mind when you're making your goals is SMART, or specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. These are really, really important, because if we don't have all these pieces, our goals may not be attainable. The barriers may get in the way. And finally, flexibility. We need to be flexible because life does get in the way. We don't want to feel that we failed. It's not a failure. It's just a readjustment, and you begin again. And we want to be able to have an idea of how to reevaluate and how to start again. We can make it a habit to organize our day to fit in our new habit and our goal work, because then that allows us to be flexible. All right, so once we've got that in place, let's talk about the steps. All right, step 1, we need to assess your wellness. The best thing that we recommend is that you get a brand new notebook, because a notebook is very helpful or a journal, being able to monitor your wellness plan. We want to create the plan, and we want to be able to go through all the steps in an organized manner, and be able to really look at what we need and what we're wanting to do with our life that's different, what changes we want to make. So the first step is to get that journal or notebook, and we want to talk about your wellness. What is it that you'd like to change? This is how you would be able to assess your wellness. The many dimensions of personal wellness overlap, and they work together to create an integrated system of well-being. And so there we have to look at all of the aspects of wellness. We have to be very honest with ourselves and decide how satisfied we feel in each of the aspects of wellness, so that you can create a plan that actually is tailored to your needs and your wants. Sometimes we feel like we need to do something, but we don't want to do it. So if we assess our wellness, we're going to be able to decide what really we want, which is going to give us the motivation. If we think about all the aspects of personal wellness and how they relate to you, and we write about them, writing helps us to engage a couple different parts of our brain. Number one, when we are just thinking in our head, we're very tangential. We go to the next thought before we finish the first thought in our head. When we write things down, we've been trained to go all the way to the punctuation. So we would like to maybe have that moment, that last part of your sentence might be very important, might be have very clarifying information. And when we write it down, we also then read it, which engages a different part of our brain. So then we are very much meditating and thinking much better when we get pen and paper, or when we are writing in a blog or online, somehow documenting, because then we are able to look at it. So if we get a notebook and we start to assess our wellness, there's a few categories to be able to see what parts of your life that you might want to make changes. So we're going to take the time to look at all those. And in your notebook, you take the time to write about each category, how you feel. You may even have one line that says, I'm very happy in this part of my wellness. I don't feel like I would like to make any changes. But at least you thought about it. So let's talk about those. The first one is emotional wellness. This aspect of wellness pertains to how well you're aware of, accepting of, and able to deal with your own feelings. Relationships, stress, self-esteem, life outlook, they're all factors that play into our emotional wellness. Are you happy in your relationships? Does stress get to you and put you in a place where you cannot achieve other goals or function very well? Are you nice to yourself, or do you have negative self-talk? That's all involved in emotional wellness. And if you take a page of your notebook to think about how you feel about these aspects, it will help you to understand if you want to make a goal to do any changes in emotional wellness. Another aspect of wellness is social wellness. This is how you see your place in the world and in society, and how well you adjust to your personal role in society. Roles are not defined by society. We can define our own roles. Many people have goals within social wellness to see friends more often, to be more social, to change relationships, to add more social activities. You want to be very honest with yourself about your role in social wellness and what you'd like to do. Would you like to volunteer more? Would you like to donate more of your time or your things to charity? This is social wellness. And if we spend the time in our notebook writing down what it is that we like about what we're doing and what we'd like to do different and what we're satisfied with, we'll be able to tell if there's a goal in social wellness. Next one is intellectual wellness. This dimension refers to the amount of information and knowledge you take in and the amount of creative, analytical thinking that you put out. Learning and problem solving and mental productivity are important aspects of intellectual wellness. Do you want to read more? Do you have a goal of going back to school? Do you want to take more classes? Do you want to learn something new? Do you want to feel that you are more intelligent when you speak to people socially? Those are all things that you could write about in your notebook and see how you feel about intellectual wellness, and is it time to make a goal for that? Next one is spiritual wellness. This wellness plan includes, or all of wellness plans include spiritual wellness, not necessarily religion, but rather as an indication of what you perceive to be the meaning of life and how you fit into it. Belief and value systems are also part of the spiritual wellness. Are you comfortable with your beliefs and values? Do you want to read more to understand your beliefs and values? Do you feel guilty that you don't go to church or that you're not involved in the community spiritual situation? These are things that you would write in your notebook on how you feel, and it would be important, and if you're comfortable with it. One of the things that I want to bring up, too, while we're in the middle of writing our wellness is that we want to be very honest with ourselves about what we want, not necessarily what society says we should do, what other people in our life say we should do. This is the time, because it's your notebook, your wellness plan. This is for you to be able to decide, not what society or the people around us. So it's very important for us to be able to have that time to reflect. That's why the notebook is great. All right, mental wellness is the next one. This pertains to our mental health, which encompasses depression, anxiety, stress management, frustration, anger management. There's some hereditary or circumstantial aspects to mental wellness. Are we in tune to it? Those are some of the things that we would write about. Would you love to be more in tune to right before you might get really depressed and be able to see what those markers are? Should you talk to a counselor? Should you talk to your doctor? How do I manage my anger or frustration? If you ask yourself those questions and how satisfied you are, you'll be able to write more about mental wellness. Another aspect of wellness is financial wellness. This is often a goal that a lot of people make, is to be as a financial goal. And so you want to be financially stable because that helps us feel well and identifies a lot of other areas. Do we need to create a savings plan? Are you happy with that? Do you need to cut expenses? Do you need to change your living arrangement because that is regarding your financial situation? How happy am I with how I spend my money? Those kind of things can really help you to realize when you're writing what it is that you're really looking for in finances, and also your values of money and money in society and how you use your money. Spending time thinking about that will really help. Physical wellness is another big one on a lot of people's list. Losing weight or exercising more, being more active, those kind of things. But it also encompasses nutritious goals and avoidance of unhealthy habits, of smoking or drinking too much or doing drugs. We want to look at how we treat ourselves physically. Do we take care of ourselves? Even can come down to, do we put moisturizer on our skin to keep ourselves healthy? Those kind of things are really important for you to spend time thinking about. How do you feel about your body? How do you feel about how you look inside and out? If we write about those, we'll be able to understand if we want to make any changes. And we have occupational wellness. Many people have goals of changing jobs or being able to climb up a ladder in the job that they're in. We want to be able to look at our occupation. And one of the things about our occupational wellness is looking at how it relates to the rest of our wellness. So we could get a better job that pays more money, but does that take us away from our family? And does that work with our other wellness goals? This is the importance of having positive attitudes toward work, toward where you're working, who you're working with, and having rewarding and enriching career paths. And if we write about those, we'll be able to understand if we're happy in our career. Do we have a network? Do we need a network? Do we need to make changes? Do we want to make changes? We ask ourselves all those questions honestly. Next one is environmental wellness. This relates to the level of your environmental consciousness. Are you at the level that you want? Is it important to you? Do you know if it's important to you? Maybe if you wrote down in your notebook how you felt about it, it's going to be able to tell you your importance, how important things are. Do you want to start composting? Do you need to recycle more? Do you want to organize recycling in your apartment complex? Those kind of things you might come up with. You might find out that things are more important than you thought or less important than you thought when you spend time with your wellness journal. Finally is medical wellness. This involves the health-promoting medical practices like medical checkups, preventive health care, medical health management, accessing resources, taking advantage of a wellness webinar, so A+ on the medical wellness side. These are things that are really important. Do I need to see my doctor more often? Is there something that I think is not going well medically with me and I keep ignoring it? That's something that we talk about a lot. What is it that we need to do or I want to do to create medical wellness and health-promoting practices in my life? And if we write about those, we might find that there are things that we'd like to make improvements on there too. Okay, so we've decided that there are all these aspects, maybe more aspects than we thought, of medical, of emotional, medical, environmental, occupational, intellectual, all these wellness aspects. So we spent in our notebook or on our computer some time talking about each one of them. And then it's time to do our steps. This step program is a lot more steps than maybe you had expected. There are a lot of things that we can do to make a really good, solid plan. And as we talked about before, if we take our time in the planning, we're going to have a higher success rate. So the first step is to assess your wellness. You want to access your journal, and you want to talk about whatever it is or read whatever it is that you wrote for each one of those wellness categories. And maybe you spend a week on this. I like to talk about taking this slow. If we spent a week on, we spent a day writing it, but then we spent a week on reading it and thinking about it, we probably will come up with more things. What it does is it engages our brain to start thinking along these lines. This is a big piece of this wellness plan that we're going to present to you today, is taking it slow and spending some time thinking about what you really want, identifying what you really want, and not rushing into things. And so in your next page of your journal, when we start to step 1, you want to make a list of how you feel about you want to make a list of after reading what it is that you wrote in each category, of maybe the changes that you want to make. So you would list in your notebook that you saw 3 of the 6 categories of what you wanted. Then they fall into other subcategories, wellness categories that you want to address right now and ones that you don't care about. For example, if I wrote mostly about emotional wellness and financial wellness and spiritual wellness, so I looked at it and I said, spiritual wellness is not something that I'm interested in doing right now, so I crossed that off the list. Because you want to ask yourself, how do you feel about the categories that are most important? And so I don't necessarily want to address this now. I might want to address it later, so I don't erase it. I keep it there. But I want to address my stress management and my financial situation now. And spiritual wellness is just not as critical. So we look at those and we make some choices after doing all that reflection and all that writing on the different wellness. Now you have an idea of what categories you want to address. So now you're going to take, like in my example, I'm going to take the emotional wellness to address my stress and financial wellness. And on the next piece of paper, I'm going to start talking about what I'd like to improve and why. This will help you understand your motivation, which also helps us identify the barriers. Sometimes we may answer that question, as I talked about earlier, of why is because someone else is encouraging us to do that. Now, if it's a physician for our health, that's different. But if it's more of a peer pressure or societal change that you're not interested in, you're not going to be motivated to do because the motivation comes from someone else or something else, you may not be as successful. You really want to ask yourself why you would like to improve in these categories, reasons why you want to change. Why am I stressed out? Why am I in lots of debt? What is it about it that has gotten me into that? Once you identify these areas and you make that plan to look at what it is that you're doing and cross out the ones that you don't want to identify now and the ones that you want to address now, and you've identified what you felt was a need but not necessarily a want, you can identify the areas that could use improvement. And that's step 2. You spend some time in your journal talking about that and why and what you want to improve, and start talking about the small changes. So for example, if I want to address my financial wellness and I want to save more money, then why? Well, because I want to get out of debt. I could also say that I have a goal to save money because I want to buy a house. We have to understand the reasons why we want improvement. And they could be very different, but it could be the kind of the same goal. So we move on to step 3 then. And step 3, we're going to set goals that are related to the improvements that you've decided that you want to make. So this is very important. This first part is where you are deciding right now is what I want to do. And this is also when we bring in the SMART goals, and we also bring in the thought that we don't want to do too much at once. So what do you want to change? Not what you feel you want to change. And we start to write these statements into specific goals. We use, remember, SMART, which is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Use that system. And then on, for example, I want to lose weight. So that's not very specific. So I want to make it more specific and measurable. I want to lose 30 pounds. So that's more measurable and more specific. And I want to lose it by September when my cousin is getting married. That gives us relevancy and achievement and time-bound. So that is a very specific goal. So we write these goals then down in our notebook. The next step is to be able to write these down on sticky notes or index cards, and maybe 10 of them, because we would like to have these scattered throughout our life, because for the next few days we want to really spend time thinking about not starting the goal, but thinking about the goal. We're not going to start the goal, we're going to meditate on it or think about this goal for a while. Read them over and over throughout the day. First thing in the morning, right before you go to bed. You can litter your house, put it on mirrors, put it on the door before you leave, put it on your monitor at work. This is really going to make it so that, A, you know this is what you want to do, because it'll raise any questions. Say, gosh, should I do this? I really don't want to. This will also have you getting excited about it, you do want to do it, you're going to get excited and you're going to start exploring possibilities. That's really important. And if we give ourselves a few days of doing that, then we usually come up with more possibilities. Often we sit down to make a goal, and then in the next few minutes we write the goal, and in the next few minutes we say how we're going to do the goal, and then in the next few minutes we start that goal. If we waited until tomorrow, what if we came up with a few different ways that we could have done that goal? What if we came up with a better idea of how to start to address the goal? Doing this will really ensure that you really want to address this and help you get excited and help you find out which possibilities you have. So spending some time. This one's a real easy one to skip over, but we don't want to do that. All right, now we're on step 4. We're going to evaluate your resources and your personal assets. Believe it or not, we still haven't necessarily started working on our habit to address the goal. We're still doing it in the planning phase. After we meditate and think about it for a while, you'll next need to evaluate your resources and your personal assets. Do I have equipment at my house to work out, or do I have a gym membership? What's my food budget? Do I have support, friends? Do I need to get a new doctor? Do I need to look into my health insurance and see if I have a nutritionist benefit or a mental health benefit? How much time do I have to devote to these changes? Do I need to do more research for the resources, or research on what I'd like to do? Writing these resources in your notebook and having it with your wellness plan will serve as a reminder that if you aren't using your buddy to help you exercise more or be more involved in social activities, then you'll be able to remind yourself, because you're going to be looking at this journal, your log for wellness, over and over. So we have to write down those resources. We also want to have room because we're going to find out other resources. Often when we start doing something different, we find that different ways to do things, other people that can be involved. So it's really important for us to look at what we need to get for resources, what we already have, before we start. Okay, here we go. So here's step 5. Now we've listed the important things and considered what the resources were, and now we are going to start working on our goal by making a habit. One of the easiest ways that we have a wellness plan not become a life change is because we haven't made any habit changes in our lifestyle. We want it to be a lifestyle change, not just a temporary change. Even if it's temporary that we're saving money to buy a home, and then we are able to then talk about how do we do this and how do we not do this, and we buy our house, we still can have a plan for finances. And that's really important. What if we now want to save for something else? We decide that we want to go on a vacation to Australia, and we need a good amount of money. Well, we just made it a habit to save money. So we want to make it a habit, so it's a life change, even for a short-term goal, especially for our long-term goals. So we want to decide there are 2 habits that we're going to make for that week to address your goal. Buying different food to address a healthy eating habit goal. Getting up early every day for a week to start getting into the habit of waking up early to work out, or to do some personal reflection or stress management every morning. Making an appointment with my doctor, or starting vitamins, starting meditating, making plans with friends, calling friends more, finding a church for services, creating a budget. These are all things that we would like to do for 1 week, for 7 days, that creates a habit. And give yourself maybe even 2 weeks to create this habit. You'll know when it feels more natural, when it's not too difficult, when it's feeling like you're getting into the swing of things and it is a habit. Once you've mastered this habit, it's time to create 2 more habits to change to address this goal. So you make a habit, work on it for a week or 2, and then you're able to make another habit that gets you closer and closer to that goal. So in step 6, we will need to start recording our progress. And a big piece of it is celebrating our success. If we don't celebrate the success, then it just feels like we cross it off the list and move on to the next idea. And that doesn't feel like celebrating, that just feels like another task. And if we're making a change, we really want to give ourselves the extra pat on the back that we are doing it. In our notebook, we also want to record this progress, what it is we did. Did we get up early every day for the week to create that habit? Did it take us 2 weeks to do that? Did we give ourselves 1 day that's flexible? And was that okay? Did we accept that? And then how those goals or how those habits and that progress on your habits helps you getting closer and closer to the goals. Not only does it help you to celebrate your progress, it also helps to give you a marker when it's time to start a new habit or a new goal when you've been able to celebrate that you achieved that goal. You could also use a calendar when it comes to this spot of recording your progress, because it might be helpful for you to keep track of important days or checkpoints that are involved in your habit making and attaining your goal. On to step 7. We need to create a reward system. We need to write down a list of rewards that you give yourself for achieving the small goals and creating those small habits along the way. So that helps you stay motivated. We've talked about it. Motivation is a really tough one, and we want to be able to stay motivated. So if we are recording our progress, and our progress is related to a reward that's small for each small progress and each small habit that you create, and then maybe a big one when the goal is achieved, that helps us stay motivated. Rewards can be anything that makes you feel good. A book you want to read, a manicure, a massage, a new electronic gadget, or a trip to the beach. And if our financial goals are there, then our rewards can be something different, that we give ourselves a day off to go and enjoy nature, or we give ourselves time for ourselves to reflect. It doesn't have to be something that you buy yourself, but it does need to be something that you decide is a reward that's really going to keep you motivated. Sometimes we create rewards because we thought that it's a good idea, but it wasn't really something that we felt that was a great pat on the back. Maybe it's something that we don't usually get to do or don't usually allow for us to do, and we want to be able to create that reward. That's very important so that we can keep motivated. On to step 8. So once you have achieved your goal, we can go to step 8. Prior to that, we keep repeating our steps. We create a new habit. We'll do it for a week. Keep meditating on our goals. And once we have created all the habits we need, then we start working on that goal achievement. So, for instance, if we talk about an exercise habit, if we made the habit of wanting to exercise after work, then for the first week we meditated on it. For the second week, we spent time looking at our schedule and saying, when I get home, I'm not going to do anything for half an hour, because when I'm ready to do my goal, I want to be getting on the treadmill for that half an hour, or doing my Wii Fitness for that half an hour. So for the first week, I'm creating a habit that for that half an hour, there are no other things. So, I get used to getting my workout clothes on. I get used to turning maybe our phone off so that we're going to be undisturbed, not having any distractions. If we need to do certain things like let our dog out or get the mail, we do that, and then we make sacred that half an hour. So we've made that habit, and then our next habit is to start getting on our treadmill each day that we've decided that we're doing that during that half an hour after work. And once we start doing that, then we look at our goal. So our goal is to exercise X times a month, maybe, or X times a week. Maybe then after a month or 2 months, however you decide that you are ready to do the next goal, which might be then a goal of doing a triathlon or a marathon or a goal of losing weight. Step 8 comes in, that you have to, before you're ready to jump into that next one, it said, now I'm working out, I got this, I made this a habit, now I'm ready for the next one. We have to remember to celebrate. It's important to celebrate. Otherwise, we just neutralize it. And then if we neutralize something that's good, then we just have good and not so good stuff in our life. So we have to celebrate everything. And then we create a wellness maintenance goal. So the example I gave you allows for a wellness maintenance goal to kind of just be involved. If we are going to then be going on our treadmill 4 times a week or 5 times a week, and then our next goal is to be able to do some type of marathon, then our maintenance goal for the habit that we created for working out is then encompassed in the goal that we create for getting ready for our marathon. So then we have to change our goals and take it to a habit of changing our working out on our treadmill then. So then we need to increase it this week, and then the next week we increase it till we get to the point that we want. That's a good maintenance goal. Other goals don't have a secondary goal to it, like the example I gave you. So we would have to create a maintenance goal. So how do we keep the weight off once we've gotten the weight off? How is it that we continue to manage our stress? What are the barriers? So then we may be able to let up and say, I don't need to go on the treadmill 5 days a week, but I do need to go on the treadmill 3 days a week because that's my created wellness maintenance goal to keep that weight off because I've already celebrated and achieved the goal of losing the weight. So we want to make sure that we're looking at that. When we do create our wellness maintenance goal, we also need to think about what the barriers are to this. Being motivated and staying motivated is very important with the maintenance also. And we also want to think about, at this point, creating some markers where we would maybe need to go back to creating the different habits. With the maintenance of keeping the weight off that you lost goal that I was speaking of, if we notice that we started gaining weight back, maybe we give ourselves slack, 5 pounds. But maybe we decided that our marker is if we gain back 10 pounds, we're going to go back to the log that we still have and created and go back and change the habits. And notice what habits change. Do we need to be working out more often? Have we forgot to change our eating habits and that didn't help us keep the weight off? And then we create a new goal. So this is a work in progress for many, many different things that we want to do. Once we've done the first one, it'd be very easy for us to be able to go back and, for instance, look at our intellectual wellness. And maybe now that we have achieved other goals, the ones that were more important, we're ready to work on that and say, you know what, I feel better about myself. I now manage my stress better, so I think I could take on a few classes of school because that's really important to me. And then we start creating that. And we go through our book, our journal, our blog, and go and do the exact same thing. So this is a really good plan that we can put in place for a lot of different things that we want to do. Short-term goals, long-term goals. The importance is celebrating and then creating the maintenance so that we feel like we can go to the next step. Important to keep in mind that as we do our wellness maintenance, we also have to make sure we keep in mind one of the things we talked about in the beginning, which is not taking on too much. So we have to look at our maintenance goals and make sure that if they're pretty big, because we have a pretty big goal that we're wanting to achieve, we want to make sure that we are also in a place of being able to not take on too much, that we start to slip on all of our habits. And so that makes it really tough. Remember, it is a lifestyle change that we're looking for. We want to be able to do things different. So that is our steps. We have some good steps and we have some good ideas, and I hope that today has helped you. And we wanted to make sure that you knew about our next webinar that is with the Choose Wellness series, which is Healthful Decisions. Maybe a good time to be looking at while you're doing your plan and you're doing well, are you making healthful decisions? You may be going back to some of your wellness assessment plans and redoing those. But on our second session on April 12th, you can sign up at mindsandassociates.com